Hi, this is Evangelist Kevin Greer of A.R.K Ministries in Chicago. Listen, I find that there's many children of God that sincerely love the Lord, but yet struggle with understanding what God's will is for their life. And because of that, they end up frustrated, they end up groping, and they end up going through a lot of trial and error in terms of what God would have them to do. See, it's kind of hard, it's very hard actually, to get really enthusiastic and fired up about doing something when you don't know what it is that you should be doing. But there is a way to find out God's will for your life, and let's talk about that a little bit today. I want to mention a scripture that I think really throws a lot of people off, and that's Matthew 22:14, where Jesus says, many are called, but few are chosen. And when a lot of people read that scripture, I think that gives them the impression that there's some people that are more special than others. There's some people that have more favor than others because there's only few that are selected. There's only the chosen few, so to speak. Or even some people go so far as to think that God might love some people more than them. And nothing could be further than the truth. So how do we go from being called to being chosen? I think there's a couple of steps. First of all, you've got to understand that God has a plan for your life. He never made anybody that he didn't have a plan for. And he's had that plan before the foundation of the world and before he created you. Let's look at the book of Jeremiah. I think this is a great example. And when God called Jeremiah when he was still a relatively young man, you look at the first chapter and the 5th verse. The Lord said to Jeremiah, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And that word knew means approved. So in the Hebrew. So he said, before I formed you in the belly, I approved you. You were pre-approved, pre-qualified. And before you came forth out of the womb, I sanctified you. Sanctified here means to set apart. So I set you apart. I made you different. And he says, I ordained you. I gave you a prophet to the nations. He gave him as a gift. So all this was planned. Jeremiah, just as you are, were thought in God's mind before he became a reality. You were a purpose before God made you a reality here on earth. You weren't just born, you were sent. That's the first thing you've got to understand. So armed with that knowledge still, how do we practically go from being called, which obviously is the case, to being chosen, to being selected? Another prophet, I think, his story really kind of breaks that home. It's in the book of Isaiah. It's the prophet Isaiah's story in the 6th chapter. And you know, in the year that King Uzziah died. Well, after Isaiah was purged with the hot coal from the altar, there came a voice from the altar, and it was the voice of the Lord, who said, who shall we send and who shall go for us? So it was not a specific call to Isaiah. It says who. God said who. And Isaiah said, here am I, send me. So it was a general call, but it was a volunteered yes from Isaiah. Because God doesn't run a draft board. It's an all-volunteer army. So that's how you're picked. You're picked when you raise your hand, and then you become hand-picked. So that's what God is saying today. In each of us, God has put a seed. And that seed tells us what we should be doing. God says, just raise your hand, say yes to him, and he'll take you to heights unknown. He's just waiting for you to say yes. God bless you.